الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. وأن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله وأتوب إليه. يا محسن قد أتاك المسيء. أنت المحسن وأنا المسيء. فبحق محمد وآل محمد صل على محمد وآل محمد وتجاوز عن قبيح ما تعلم مني. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف الله أكبر بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه
O God, I beseech you to grant me that which will ensure your mercy and make certain your forgiveness, will bring me deliverance from hellfire and from every affliction, provide the means of winning admission into paradise, attain your approval in the abode of peace, and be the neighbor of your Prophet Muhammad, peace be to him and to his family. O God, whatever blessing we enjoy comes from you, there is no God but you. I seek your forgiveness and turn to you penitently. Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه استغفر ربي واتوب إليه الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بموضع رزقي، وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي، فأجول في طلبه البلدان، فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران، لا أدري في سهل هو أم في جبل، أم في أرض أم في سماء، أم في بر أم في بحر، وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من، وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك، وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله، واجعل يا ربي رزقك لي واسعا، ومطلبه سهلا، ومأخذه قريبا، ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا، فإنك غني عن عذابي، وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله، وجد على عبدك بفضلك، إنك ذو فضل عظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. O God, I have no knowledge of the place of my livelihood, and I seek it only through notions that cross my mind. I roam through the towns in its quest, and I'm like a bewildered man in my search, not knowing whether it is in the plains or in the mountains, whether it is on the earth or in the heaven, whether on land or in sea, and whose hand and with whom, though I know that its knowledge is with you, and its means are in your hands. And it is you who apportion it with your kindness, provide its means with your mercy. O God, bless Muhammad and his family, and make my livelihood, my Lord, ample, its quest easy, and its source nearby. And do not put me to the hardship of seeking livelihood where you have not ordained it for me. For you have no need to torment me, and I stand in need of your mercy. So bless Muhammad and his family, and give liberally to this servant of yours out of your grace. Indeed, you are dispenser of a mighty grace. Salawat. Inshallah, ziyarah will be after the program.
Per Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Brothers and sisters, if you'd like to settle in, inshallah, we'll begin the program in just a few minutes. Per Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Inshallah, to begin the program for this evening, I'd like to request Brother Hassan for recitation of Holy Quran with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. محمد رسول الله هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فآزره فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع ليغيظ بهم الكفار وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Jazakallah khair, brother, for that amazing recitation. Another loud salawat for him, please. Inshallah, at this time, I'd like to request Brother Faizan for recitation of poetry and request our brothers and sisters to move closer to, inshallah, facilitate and create the atmosphere of a celebration tonight with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ale Muhammad.
برائے خوشنودی امام زمان علیہ السلام بلند تر صلوات. شہید استاد سبت جعفر زیدی کی ایک کہی ہوئی نعت ہے, ایک اور درود بھیجے محمد والے محمد. کون کہتا ہے مجھے شان سکندر دے دے, کون کہتا ہے مجھے شان سکندر دے دے, میرے معبود مجھے فخر ابو ذر دے دے, مالک لوح و قلم بغیر جہاد قلمی, مالک لوح و قلم بغیر جہاد قلمی, مجھ کو الفاظ و مفاہیم کا لشکر دے دے, عشق جو تو نے اویسے करनी को बख्शा, इश्क जो तूने अवैसे करनी को बख्शा, हो जो मुमकिन तो मुझे उससे फुजूं तर दे दे। ताजवर भी मेरे कदमों में सआदत ढूंढे, ताजवर भी मेरे कदमों में सआदत ढूंढे, ज़ीनते सर को जो नालैन पैगंबर दे दे। जिनको सरकार ने बख्शा शरफ़े गोयाई, जिनको सरकार ने बख्शा शरफ़े गोयाई, लालो याकूत न दे मुझको वो कंकर दे दे। और तेरे महबूब ने जो पेट पा बांधा अक्सर, तेरे महबूब ने जो पेट पा बांधा अक्सर, वुसअते रिज़्क़ न दे मुझको वो पत्थर दे दे। ज़ाहिरी तन के लिए और ना कफन को कपड़ा, ज़ाहिरी तन के लिए और ना कफन को कपड़ा, जो मेरे ऐब छुपा दे वही चादर दे दे। वक्त के मरहब अंतर से निमटने के लिए, वक्त के मरहब अंतर से निमटने के लिए, फिर कोई फातह खैबर सा ग़ज़फ़र दे दे। और सिबते जाफ़र की तो बख्शिश को यही काफ़ी है, सिबते जाफ़र की तो बख्शिश को यही काफ़ी है, कि ग़ुलामी ये दरे आले पैगंबर दे दे। कौन कहता है मुझे शान सिकंदर दे दे। मेरे माबूद मुझे फ़क्र अबू ज़र दे दे। बराए बुलंदी दर्जात शहीद उस्ताद जाफ़र ज़ैदी बुलंदतर सलावत।
Jazakallah Brother Faizan for that amazing recitation. Another Allah salawat for him, please. Respected Sheikh and Sayyid, brothers and sisters of faith, Assalamu alaikum. Congratulations to the believers on the birth of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. Allah. Just a few reminders before I request a Sheikh to begin his speech for tonight. Please note that tomorrow night we will be continuing the program for the celebrations, starting with Salat al-Maghrib at approximately 7:41 p.m., ending with the game of Kahoot. For more details, please visit our WhatsApp announcements. Please join us tonight for our very first raffle from the very first harvest from CFK Gardens. The prize distribution is okra. Please find myself on the men's side and Sister Samina on the sister's side for raffle tickets. Inshallah, Sheikh Mahdi will announce the winner after the speech. Before I request a Sheikh to ascend the member, I'd like to request that we recited Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of tonight's program sponsors. Let us also include our own marhumin and mu'minat and those of the Muslim Ummah. At this time, I'd like to request the Sheikh to ascend the member for his speech tonight and request brothers and sisters to move closer to the member to, inshallah, create the atmosphere of celebration with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ale Muhammad.
الفاتحة. بسم الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغه مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, a second loud salawat. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. First and foremost, on these special days and nights that we are going through, my congratulations on the auspicious birth of our beloved 6th Imam, Al-Imam Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The topic that we'll be discussing tonight, inshallah, is entitled The Loyal Students and Disciples of the 6th Imam. When you look at the life of our beloved 6th Imam, you find that the role that he played was quite unique. In fact, every single one of our Imams, the lives that they lived and the roles that they played was quite unique. The time of one Imam to another Imam was never similar to one another. This is why scholars of ours at times have suggested that we are dealing with 14 different periods of history, and hence why we were given 14 infallibles, or 12 periods of history, which is why we were given 12 different Imams. Every one of our Imams was dealing with a different era and a different situation. The time of the 6th Imam was very unique, and it's very special for us, mainly because if you were to look at the time of the 6th Imam, you would find many commonalities between his time and the times that we are going through and the times that we are living through. It was not a time, at least for those of us who live in this part of the world, it was not a time of open oppression. People had the ability to practice their faith. It was not like the time of the Prophet early on in Mecca. At the same time, there was hidden forms of oppression. You find in the time of the 6th Imam, there are still many times where the Imam is worried and cautious about what he teaches to his companions. If you ask the average Shia about the time of the 5th and 6th Imam, they will tell you that it was a time of complete freedom. The 5th and 6th Imam had the opportunity to preach. They had the opportunity to teach. They'll tell you that the two dynasties of Bani Umayyah and Bani Abbas were now getting into conflict with one another, which opened up a platform and an opportunity for the 5th and 6th Imam to utilize this opportunity. At the same time, when you look at the time of the 6th Imam, you find that many of the narrations that have to do with the topic of taqiyya, times where the Imam changes a ruling or doesn't share the full story about a particular ruling with his own companions, a number of these narrations have to do with the time of the 6th Imam. And if the 6th Imam is performing what we call taqiyya, that naturally means it is not a time of complete freedom. Therefore, the time of the 6th Imam is very interesting, it's unique, it's intriguing, and it has many commonalities with the situations that we deal with today. In the midst of all of this, the 6th Imam utilized this opportunity and this switch from the time of Bani Umayyah to the time of Bani al-Abbas to promote the teachings of the Shia school of thought. One thing that you will notice in Islamic history as you go from the first dynasty to the second dynasty, when you go from the time of Bani Umayyah to the time of Bani al-Abbas, is that you find Bani Umayyah were not fans of knowledge. They were not fans of teaching and preaching. They were not fans of libraries. They were not fans of universities. Bani al-Abbas, on the other hand, were the exact opposite. Though they had their own wrong intentions, they were big fans of knowledge, of debates, of libraries, and of universities. And the 6th Imam utilized this opportunity and this openness that he had been afforded to preach the teachings of the Shia school of thought. But make no mistake, because the reality is, if you want to teach a particular school of thought, there have to be those who will accept and receive that knowledge from you. And this is where the students of the 6th Imam, or if I use a better term, the disciples of the 6th Imam, come into the picture. Because not everyone who came and sat in a gathering where the 6th Imam was preaching was at the same level in terms of his acceptance of what the 6th Imam was teaching. There were those who simply came to see what he had to say. They saw him as a scholar amongst other scholars. Then you had disciples. They came to fundamentally accept and receive what he is preaching. Tonight, inshallah, we want to delve into the lives of 5 of these disciples of the 6th Imam and see what lessons we can learn from the personal lives of these individuals. And in order to do so, we'll pose the following questions. Number 1, was the time of the 6th Imam a time of complete freedom, Or what do we understand from the narrations that speak of the concept of taqiyya during his time? Number two, what is it meant when it's said that the school of the sixth Imam contained thousands of students? Does it mean all of these students every morning woke up and came to the class of the sixth Imam? Or were these students at differing levels? Number three, who was Zurara ibn A'yan, this close companion of the sixth Imam? And what made him reach such a high status that the Ahlul Bayt used to constantly think of him and pray for him? What characteristics did he have? Number four, who was Humran ibn A'yan, the brother of Zurara? And what role did he play and what lessons can be learned from his life? Number five, which of the companions of the sixth Imam was there who by age was the youngest of all, but somehow, some way had reached the status that when he used to enter into the gathering, though there were students and disciples whose beards had turned white, the sixth Imam would stand for this young disciple of his? And number six, and finally, which companion of the sixth Imam was it who was blind and is reaching the final moments of his life and asked the Imam to bring back to him his eyesight, but the Imam gave him an option between receiving his eyesight or awaiting the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 6 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. When you look at the time of the sixth Imam, many of us assume this is a time of complete freedom. When you look at the actual narrations that are narrated from his life, you find no, it was not in fact a time of complete freedom. It was a time of apparent or superficial freedom. At the end of the day, the Imam was very concerned about individuals who were followers of his school of thought. And this is why Zurara says, I was sitting one day with the fifth Imam. When I was sitting with the fifth Imam, I saw a person came from the land of Iraq. He came to ask the Imam certain questions, and this is in the context of Hajj. It says when he came, he asked the fifth Imam a question. The fifth Imam answered the question for him. Time passed by, another person came. In fact, he had a similar question to the question of the previous individual. And yet somehow, some way, the fifth Imam gave him an answer slightly different from the answer that he had given before. A third person entered, similar question. And yet the Imam gave him yet another answer to this question. Detailed answers, but answers that are different. I turned to him, I said, Yabna Rasulullah, your followers are coming from a long way, and it seems as though the answers you are giving to them are different. So the fifth Imam told him, yes, Zurara, Inna hadha abqa lana wa lakum. This is safer for us and safer for all of you. Zurara narrates, he says, one day I was with the sixth Imam. A similar incident took place. I turned to him. I said, Yabna Rasulullah, O Ja'far ibn Muhammad, you're giving different answers on these detailed issues. He says he gave me the same response that his father gave to me. He said, yes, Zurara, inna hada abqa lana wa lakum. This is safer for us and for you, because if all of you decide to do things exactly the same way, you will be easily identified. Therefore, the concept of taqiyya is present even during the time of the fifth Imam and the sixth Imam. And this is why those special companions of the sixth Imam become very crucial, because if they're not there to pass on the message of the sixth Imam, today you and I wouldn't have access to all of these corpus of hadith that they have narrated for us. Not every person who came and sat in the class of the sixth Imam was at the same level. Many times you will find people, even speakers at times, they will say, yes, in the class of the sixth Imam, in the teaching of the sixth Imam, in the university, some people call it, of the sixth Imam, there were 4,000 students, for example, numbers that are narrated in history. And you and I assume a student is the one who wakes up in the morning and every day he packs his stuff, goes to class, he's taking notes, he's receiving what the teacher is teaching. The reality is far from this. When they said the students of the sixth Imam reaches 4,000 or around that number, they were referring to individuals who would come and sit and benefit from the sixth Imam. The biggest example of this is, of course, the two founders of two fiqhi schools of thought within Ahlus Sunnah, Malik ibn Anas, Abu Hanifa, are both individuals who Shia and Sunni agree at one point or another benefited from the classes of the sixth Imam. But when we say benefited from their classes, does it mean they were like disciples? Does it mean they were like the Zuraras of the world, where every day they were just waiting to see what Ja'far ibn Muhammad has to say? No. Their approach was, we come, we sit in the class, we benefit. There are many others that they also go to and benefit from. Yes, the class of Ja'far ibn Muhammad is also one of those classes that we benefit from, yes? Doesn't mean that because they were students, they have to fall in line with the school of thought of the sixth Imam. There were, however, those students who, when the sixth Imam said something, they received it and they passed it on very carefully. The problem that we had in history was that not all narrators were at the same level. And the first Imam, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He touches on this in a beautiful narration in Al-Kafi. They came to the first Imam. They said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we hear other schools of thought, they narrate hadith different from your hadith. The things they say, things you say, not exactly the same thing. It's interesting when you look into our corpus between Shi'i hadith and Sunni hadith, you will find differences and interesting differences. Sometimes the same narration is quoted in both schools of thought, yes? Except one word is different in this hadith compared to that hadith. You read in our corpus, for example, that the Mahdi, who will come at the end of times, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He is the type of person that his return is definite. He will definitely appear. And in our narration says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will prepare his affairs for him in one night. Yes? يُصْلِحُ اللَّهُ أَمْرَهُ فِي لَيْلَةٍ. In Sunni hadith, you find very similar terminology. Except it says what? وَيُصْلِحُهُ فِي لَيْلَةٍ. Allah will correct him in one night. So correct his affairs, correct him. What difference does it make? It makes a very big difference. يُصْلِحُهُ فِي لَيْلَةٍ. Then that person sits there and says, yes, the Mahdi, when he starts out in his life, he doesn't start out as a wonderful person. Initially, he starts out as a sinner. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps him to repent overnight, and then he leads the Muslim ummah. One word of a difference in the narration made this big difference in the understanding that each school of thought has as it relates to this issue. Hence, you find this opinion I mentioned. Some Sunni scholars are of this opinion. That's why it was very important for the first Imam, when the narrations are being narrated, how come this school of thought is coming with these narrations? How come this school of thought is coming with these narrations? Isn't the source the same source? This is a question many times we have. The first Imam, he shed light on this in Al-Kafi. He said, إِنَّمَا أَتَاكُمُ الْحَدِيثِ مِنْ أَرْبَعَةٍ لَيْسَ لَهَا خَامِسُ. There is 4 ways of hadith, 4 ways of how hadith has reached us. There is no 5th way. The Imam is going to categorize the different narrators. He said, listen, the reason why you see these differences is because the narrators are different. He said the first category is that narrator who was with the Prophet, and while he was with the Prophet, he heard the hadith of the Prophet, but for whatever reason, later shaitan got the best of him. So down the road when he's narrating the hadith, he changed it a little bit. Changed the wording of the hadith, changed the meaning of the hadith, narrated it in a way that would work to his own interest and his own benefits. The first one, rajulun munafiq, the Imam said. Okay, wonderful. Then he said, but it's not just that. Said, then there's a second category of narrators. So which category is this? The category of those who are around the Prophet. They had good intentions, but the Prophet said one thing and he understood something else. Don't we experience this? Yes? You tell your husband, your wife something, they understand something else altogether. Yes? The narration said, this one, he had wahma, his mistakes. The Prophet said one thing, he misunderstood what the Prophet said. This is also part of the reason why you have these differences. Category number 3, the Imam said, you know, this person, he didn't change the truth on purpose. No, that wasn't him. He also didn't make a mistake, but you know what happened? he wasn't with the Prophet all the time. He was with the Prophet on certain situations, only at certain times. So he heard one statement of the Prophet, but didn't hear the other statements of the Prophets. He heard the Prophet said, this is haram. He didn't hear when the Prophet made an exception to that haram later. He heard the statement of the Prophet when he said, this is halal or this is wajib. He didn't hear the other statements of the Prophet. Yes? He said, this is the third category. Then he said, there are those who fall under the fourth category. They are the ones, when they receive the message of the Prophet or the Ahl Bayt, they don't change it, they don't make mistakes, and their knowledge is complete. And this is where these disciples of the sixth Imam fall under. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the hadith corpus that we have today. Each of those five that we will go to tonight, inshallah, on average, their name appears in thousands of narrations. Now, we will talk about how difficult it is to narrate hadith, because we think narrating hadith means sitting there, hearing something, and then going and telling other people. That's one way of narrating hadith. The way these disciples of the sixth Imam narrated hadith, slightly different from this and far more difficult. Allah salawat, please. The first of those individuals that we find in the life of the sixth Imam is Zurara ibn A'yan al-Kufi. The name of Zurara occurs in 3,000 narrations. Now, it's a sad reality that when we mention these names, and I speak of myself, for many of the Shia, these names are not even familiar. Ask a Shi'i if he knows Bukhari and Muslim. He definitely knows Bukhari and Muslim, doesn't he? He knows Tirmidhi too. He knows this, he knows that. Ask him if he knows who Zurara is. All of us say, I don't know who Zurara is. But he narrated 3,000 narrations. Yeah, but we don't take time to even understand who this individual is, yes? Zurara ibn A'yan al-Kufi. He came from a family called the family of Ali A'yan. This family, top-notch family. You know some families, you see them. From that family come scientists, engineers, amazing people. This is how Ali A'yan were. Zurara had a very special status in the eyes of the Ahlul Bayt. Why? How did he reach this status that the fifth Imam and sixth Imam constantly used to speak about him? They constantly used to praise him. They constantly used to protect him from threats and dangers that were coming his way. Because Zurara was not the type of person who would just sit there and look at the sixth Imam and see what he says and say, okay, inshallah, if I remember this, I'll pass this on. This is not how he narrated hadith. How did he reach that status? This is how he did it. Zurara had a couple of important characteristics. The most important of all was work ethic. What Zurara did, whatever he did it in the best possible way. He's going to narrate hadith, but he wants to protect this hadith. He wants to pass it on for generations. He wants to leave a heritage for the Shia. So Zurara was the type of person, though he was in Kufa, he was from Kufa. Kufa is in today's Iraq, yes? And the Imam most of the time was where? In Medina, in today's Arabia, yes? How far of a distance that is? That's a very far distance. But Zurara would put on and take on the burden of traveling from Kufa all the way to where? To Medina, to hear hadith directly from the lips of the sixth Imam. This is what made him so special. The sacrifices that he made on the way. So there were those who would stay in Kufa. They would wait for people to come back from Medina and share what the sixth Imam was preaching. Yes? That's why the narration says, at one point, if you entered into the masjid of Kufa, 900 people would be there, sitting there, saying, Haddathani Ja'far ibn Muhammad. I heard this from who? From Ja'far ibn Muhammad. There were many people who were quoting from the Imam. But then there was Zurara who wouldn't sit in Kufa. There was Zurara who used to do this in the best way possible. I'm going to go to the Imam. I'm going to sit in front of the Imam myself. This is characteristic number one. This is why he had that type of status, because of this work ethic. Number two, what else did Zurara do? When others came to hear the sixth Imam, they came, what did they come with? They come with their ears. But Zurara didn't used to come with his ears. Zurara used to come with his writing material. That makes a world of difference. A world of difference. So the narration says when Zurara used to come and he used to be in the presence of the sixth Imam, immediately he's taking notes. Now, you have to understand that at that time, paper is still not a thing. Maybe 50 years, 100 years later, paper becomes a more dominant thing in that part of the world, yes? Still, paper is not a thing. What are they using? They're using parchments. That's animal skin. They're using maybe papyrus. Maybe they're using animal bones. Maybe they're using stones, tablets, these types of things. So you imagine the work ethic of someone who wants to come and sit in front of the sixth Imam, says, I have to write it. Writing is not easy. That's not a simple thing. But this is what helped Zurara reach that point where the fifth Imam and the sixth Imam constantly used to pray for Zurara. Yes? And when threats were coming the direction of Zurara, the fifth and sixth Imam would do things to protect him from that threat. The lesson to be learnt from Zurara is the work ethic that Zurara had. Allahumma salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We move on to the second companion, Humran ibn A'yan, the brother of Zurara. We don't know as much about Humran as we do about Zurara, and there is a reason for that. Because Humran played a role slightly different from the role of Zurara. Zurara's role was to narrate hadith from the sixth Imam. What is the sixth Imam preaching? I will take that and share that in other cities, mainly in Kufa, which was the main stronghold of the Shia at that time. Humran's role, slightly different. Humran was more of a logistics guy. He played the role of a wakil. That means if someone needs to get money to the sixth Imam, he's going to play that role. If someone has to write a letter to the sixth Imam, he's going to play that role. If the sixth Imam wants to get a message to his followers, he's going to do it through who? He's going to do it through his wakil, through these deputies and these representatives, yes? But interestingly enough, every time people used to come to Hajj, and the Imam used to see his own companions, he would ask about who? He would ask about Humran ibn A'yan. So when people used to come to Hajj, the Imam used to ask him, do you have any news of Humran? What's going on with Humran? Is his family doing well? Is he doing well? They say, yes, Yabna Rasulullah, he's doing well. He said, when you go back, send my salam to Humran. Interesting, huh? Two children, yes, two brothers, same family, amazing family. Each one of them played their own role. None of them ever came and said, why am I not doing what he's doing? How come he gets to write hadith? I want to write hadith too. How come he's doing logistics? I want to. No, everybody understood their own role. The obedience that they had to the sixth Imam. If it wasn't for obedience like this, we wouldn't have a school of thought today. We wouldn't have a hadith corpus today. You understand this? The lesson from Humran is understand your role and play that role well. Every single one of us has their own role to play. It's wrong for me to sit there and say, no, I don't want this role. I want that role. But you're not good at that role. So why don't you help in this role? No. I want that role. See, now you're creating problems. Now, every one of these individuals, obedience to the sixth Imam. This is the lesson from the life of Humran. Let us move on to number 3. This companion of the sixth Imam, who was probably the youngest of all, Hisham ibn Hakam. This name that we've heard of, yes, Hisham. Hisham's story is different from many of the other companions of the sixth Imam. Why? Because these other companions, they're growing up in Muslim environments, Muslim books, so on and so forth. Hisham is far more audacious. Hisham is far more bold. Hisham is far more curious. You know, you always have that one person in the friend group, yes, who's not pleased with simple answers. You know what I'm talking about, yes? You say, Baba, this is the answer to this question. He says, yeah, but what about this? I say, Baba, stop making our life difficult. The answer is good enough. That was Hisham. Hisham was the type of person, he was not pleased with basic answers. So Hisham is growing up in this society, and this is a time where Greek literature and literature from outside of Muslim lands are now coming into and being translated into Arabic. Hisham starts out reading philosophical books, yes, the works of Aristotle and others, but he feels like something is missing. He feels like there's something deeper out there. He feels like there's something richer out there. So he keeps going around asking, trying to figure out his life essentially. And at one point he hears, yes, Ja'far ibn Muhammad, he has classes, knowledgeable, all of this. So he comes to his uncle, yes. Kashi, the famous Rijali, he has mentioned this in his book. He narrates, he says, Hisham came to his uncle. Uncle's name, Umar ibn Yazid. Said, my uncle, I want to go and meet Ja'far ibn Muhammad. Yes? You have a good relationship with him. Yes? Go and ask him so that I can find an audience with him so that I can meet him. Okay. The uncle has a problem. Because the moment Hisham came and made this request, his uncle was thinking, you're a little too bold. You're a little too audacious. In other words, you're going to embarrass us. You're going to put the sixth Imam in a difficult position. You're going to be that guy who's not going to be okay with just any answer. So, his uncle says, I was doubtful. Hisham keeps insisting. His uncle said, that's fine. I'll go and speak. He finds an audience with the sixth Imam, his uncle. Turns to the sixth Imam. O Ja'far ibn Muhammad, Yabna Rasulullah. This nephew of mine, he wants to come speak to you. He wants to come and ask you questions. He wants to have a conversation with you. The sixth Imam says, no problem, tell him to come. So his uncle says, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. He's walking out of the house. So Kashi narrates what happened before his uncle could make his way to Hisham to even give him this news. He started having serious doubts. He came back and said, but Hisham might create some big problems. So he says, I made my way back again to the house of Ja'far ibn Muhammad. I entered. He said, yes, what have you come for again? He said, you know this nephew of mine I was telling you about, yes? He's a little bold. He's a little audacious. So he's giving him what? A heads up. So what did the sixth Imam say? Sixth Imam said lines, it gives you goosebumps. The sixth Imam looked at him, smiled. He said, Takhafu alayya? He said, you're fearful for me? You think I can't handle him? You think I can't take on Hisham ibn Hakam? Almost as if saying, this is adorable that you think I won't be able to deal with him. Takhafu alayya, you're fearful for me. He said, ya Rasulullah, I'm worried. He said, don't worry about it. Tell Hisham to come. So Hisham comes. Before we go into what Hisham said, this idea that Hisham started his journey for looking elsewhere and then was guided to the message and the teachings of the sixth Imam is something that many of our children, number one, will go through. Number two, we should in fact encourage this. What do I mean by it? Before we continue with the story of Hisham. Brothers and sisters, that time has ended where you sit there and say, no, I'm only going to expose my child to Islamic teachings, to Islamic rulings, or to Shi'i rulings, Shi'i teachings. God forbid he hears anything else. God forbid he hears these questions. God forbid, those times are over. And I share this as a personal, anecdotal, experience of mine. In my own journey growing up, one of the biggest elements that helped me gain conviction in our faith, whether it's Islam as a whole or within our school of thought, was what? Was learning about other religions and other schools of thought. And this is a problem we have in our communities. Because God forbid if the sheikh sits there and he brings up questions, arguments, points from other religions, from other ideologies, from other schools of thoughts. Then they say, well, I thought this is a place of learning for my children. Why are these points being brought up? These points are being brought up because your children are going to deal with these questions. In fact, adults are dealing with these questions. This is extremely important, brothers and sisters. You and I have to create a situation where our children are exposed to other faiths in a guided manner. They are exposed to other schools of thought in a guided manner. We don't want them to grow up with this understanding that their faith is unchallenged until they hit college. Then in college, they're telling them, oh, by the way, you have a different Quran. You don't know this? By the way, you believe your imams have godly powers. You don't know this? By the way, half of your books of hadith, they have issues in their authenticity. You don't know this? My child needs to hear these things before he reaches that point. And that will be a means of conviction for him. Why shouldn't my children learn other faiths? And I tell you from my own experience and many of the other brothers and sisters who have experienced, yes, this is one of the ways you build conviction for your children. Yes, let them learn about other faiths. You should cause that. Yes? You should place them in a situation where they learn about other faiths and other schools of thought. And then when they have the opportunity to compare, that will bring them a conviction that is far greater than anything you could ever tell them. And this is part of the role of the center, by the way. A center is not supposed to just have rituals. That's part of it. Another big part of it is sharing other schools of thought, other religions, other ideologies, other lifestyles, so that my child can have an open perspective and compare, and inshallah he will make the right decision. Yes, that's not a guarantee, but it's in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hisham is now pretty glad that he's going to go and meet the sixth Imam. So the narration says his uncle held his hand, brought him to this gathering, entered into the gathering. They sit down. So Hisham wants to start with his barrage of questions. So the sixth Imam looked at him, said, Hisham, you follow this school of thought that is called Jahmiyyah. It's a school of thought that existed at that time. I have a question for you. This belief system you have, it has this problem. What's the answer to this question? How do you solve this problem? And then the bold, audacious Hisham, all of a sudden, start to go quiet, silent. He's thinking. And here you see one of the etiquettes that the sixth Imam displayed, yes? Because Hisham in this moment, he couldn't answer. But you know what he said? He said, Oh Ja'far ibn Muhammad, I need time to go and come back. I need time to go and see if there's an answer to this question or not. So what did Ja'far ibn Muhammad say? He said, Hisham, you have that opportunity. Go. He gave him multiple days. This is one of the etiquette of discussion. When you're discussing something with someone, if they need time, you have to give them time. Not like these shouting matches that you see nowadays on social media, yeah? Oh, no, what's the answer to this? You don't have the answer to this, so that. No, you need time? Okay, take some time, see what the answer to this question is. This is one of the signs that shows if someone truly is there for understanding or they're only there, yes, to ruin the other side's arguments. So Hisham went for a number of days. He came back. He said, did you find the answer? He said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I didn't find any answer to this question. He said, in fact, I had a second question. Yes, Ya ibn Rasulullah, what's your second question? He asked him a second question. Again, Hisham got silent. Said, I need time for this one too. Multiple days, Hisham came back to his uncle. He said, Uncle, I need to meet him again. He came to the sixth Imam. The sixth Imam said, tell Hisham this time to meet me outside of the city, somewhere else. It's not my house anymore. Hisham says, I was excited. I went ahead of time. And I waited for the sixth Imam to come. Now he's anticipating conversation, discussion, whatever the case might be. He says, when I saw the sixth Imam come and he was riding maybe a mule, yes? When he came, his presence was so overwhelming, I just stared at him. I couldn't say anything. And he says, the sixth Imam looked at me for a couple seconds. And then he continued on his path with the animal that he was riding. And Hisham ibn Hakam from that point onwards became what? A disciple of Ja'far ibn Muhammad. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The lesson from Hisham ibn Hakam is we have to expose our children and our community to other religions, to other schools of thought. Let them compare. That will be a means of conviction for them. Number 4, Abdullah ibn Abi Ya'fur. His name also occurs in thousands of narrations. The obedience that Abdullah had when it came to the sixth Imam. He turned to the sixth Imam one day. He said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I have the type of obedience to you and the type of loyalty to you that if one day you brought me a pomegranate and you cut this pomegranate in half Same pomegranate. And you turned to one side of this pomegranate and you said it's haram for you to eat from this side. And you turned to the other side of the pomegranate and you said this one is halal for you. Though I saw you cutting the pomegranate, same source, same pomegranate. He said, if you were to tell me that, I wouldn't touch this side and I would only touch this side. This is the level of obedience. And hence you find Imam Sadiq, he constantly had this affectionate relationship with these students of his. So anytime they were not there, he would ask others about them. He would send his salams to them. And on one occasion, when they came to visit him, he said, it makes me happy when you come and visit me, and it takes away some of my concerns with the Khalifa. Because the sixth Imam, we believe, didn't go through a difficult time. In reality, the Khalifa, on multiple occasions, summoned him with the intention of killing him. And our narrations tell us that on multiple occasions, before the sixth Imam came to see the Khalifa, he saw the Prophet in his dream. And in that dream, the Prophet taught the sixth Imam a particular dhikr, a particular dua to recite when he is in the presence of the Khalifa, just so that the Khalifa would not end up taking his life. Abdullah ibn Abi Ya'fur, number 4. Number 5, and finally, that special companion of the sixth Imam who had lost his eyesight, Abu Basir. Abu Basir's name occurs in 2,000 narrations. A beautiful thing about Abu Basir was that though he had lost his eyesight, his heart could see better than maybe anybody else. And so he says, on one day, I was in the presence of the fifth Imam. And I turned to the fifth Imam. I said, Yabna Rasulullah, isn't it true that you all are the heirs and the inheritors of the previous prophets? He said, yes, that is true. He said, isn't it true that you have the ability تحيي الموتى وتبرئ الأكمه والأبرص? You have the ability to give life to the death and to heal the illnesses and the sicknesses that people have. The Imam said, yes. Now, pause here for a second. When the Imam says, I have this ability, does it mean that the Imam is the one who everything that happens in the world runs through him? Or does it mean that whenever he wills, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him the ability to carry out a miracle of this sort? Or does it mean whenever he wants, he asks Allah and Allah does it? Our scholars' interpretation is different on this issue. This is not a matter of consensus within our own school of thought. Different scholars have different understandings on this issue. Did they have wilaya takwiniya, meaning everything ran through them? There are some scholars who believe that. Does it mean that on particular occasions Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the ability? Some scholars believe this. Does it mean that they would ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would do it? Some scholars believe the latter. There's close to 8 different opinions about how this issue took place. Nonetheless, this narration from Al-Kafi, which has a very strong chain, by the way, he asked the Imam, do you have this ability? قال نعم. So, yes, I have this ability. He said, Yabna Rasulullah, you see me. I'm an old man. I've lost my eyesight. I would love for you to return my eyesight to me. So the fifth Imam turned to him. He said, Udnu minni, come closer. So I went closer and he masaha ala aynayya. He wiped my face with his hands. Placed his hand on my face. And Abu Basir says, I looked. And all of a sudden, I can see the sun, and I can see the people, and I can see the walls, and I can see the ground. Now imagine the overwhelming moment that this is, the overwhelming situation that this is, yes? So Abu Basir said, I could see everything. So I'm happy, I'm pleased. Except the fifth Imam turned towards me. He said, oh Abu Basir, do you want to take this? And on the day of judgment, God judges you the same way He judges the rest of people. Or, oh Abu Basir, do you want me to take away your eyesight again? But on judgment day, you have a free pass to heaven. Which one do you prefer? Now, if it was any of us, of course. Myself, I'd say, of course, I need this eyesight. And Abu Basir said, Yabna Rasulullah, I would rather lose my eyesight so that on the day of judgment, I can walk into heaven with a special pass. I don't want my hisab to be like the hisab of everybody else on that day. I want to have a special pass straight into heaven. And the narration says the Imam took away his eyesight again from him. This is the level of obedience that they had when it came to the Imam. That's why the Quran says there are some companions of ours, all they say to the Prophet and the Ahl Bayt is what? Sami'na wa ata'na. We heard what you said and we will obey what you have said. All of these companions, brothers and sisters, are the reasons why we have the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt today. The message of the sixth Imam for you and I today is to invest in the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt, which unfortunately is not invested in our communities. In our communities, ritual is priority number 1, and then priority number 2, and then priority number 3, maybe number 4 is the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt. We will not last like this. In fact, no faith will ever exist like this. This issue that you find religion is on a decline, faith is on a decline, every major religion in the world, if you look at the data, the only way to go against it, or one of the main ways to go against it, is investing in the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt. Yes? This is why I'll end tonight's talk with this hadith of the sixth Imam, Al-Imam Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He said, Lastu uhibbu, I would not like to see shabban, a young man, a young woman, except in 2 situations. Imma aliman, either he's already done his homework and he's gained his knowledge of this religion, aw muta'alliman, or he is in the process of gaining this knowledge. I want him to constantly be one or the other. Either he's done his homework or he is in the process of doing his homework. Either he's already put in the time or he's realized he has shortcomings, so now he is working on it. He's investing in it. He said, Imma aliman aw muta'alliman. And then look at what the sixth Imam said. This is such a beautiful description of what we find in our communities, by the way. He said, you know why? Because if he doesn't do this, فَإِن لَمْ يَفْعَلْ, if he's not gaining knowledge, فَرَّطَ, it's a shortcoming on his end. وَإِن فَرَّطَ, and if he has this shortcoming, ضَيَّعَ, he will ruin his potential. He will perish. He's going to mess things up in his life. He said if he doesn't do this, farrata, shortcoming. وَإِن فَرَّتَ ضَيَّعَ, if he has this shortcoming, he's going to be missing out on the potential that he is ruining. وَإِن ضَيَّعَ, and if he does this, أَثِمَ, he's going to end up committing sins. If he doesn't have that knowledge, where is it going to lead? Disobedience. أَثِمَ. وَإِن أَثِمَ, and if he goes down this route of committing sins, then what happens? He is heading towards hellfire. Where did it start from? إِمَّا عَالِمًا أَوْ مُتَعَلِّمًا. Our hope is, inshallah, one day, the name of this center. Many of us assume that the name of this center was chosen following, of course, who? The first Imam, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Madinatul Ilm, yes, city of knowledge, yes. The reality is, on a deeper level, it relates to who? It relates to the sixth Imam. Because the sixth Imam had an opportunity to act on the vision of the first Imam, maybe more than the first Imam himself. And we pray, and this is my dream, inshallah, that hopefully all of us, our community comes together and we embody this reality. And truly this becomes, inshallah, a city of knowledge. Yes? And then, inshallah, on the day of judgment, we have made Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala proud, and we have made the Ahl Bayt proud of us as well. Inshallah, with that, Allahu Akbar. So inshallah, with that, we'll bring tonight's talk to an end. Before we end with ziyarah, as I think there is this raffle. So the raffle is for some of the produce from the garden. So there's a community garden, because alhamdulillah, the center was not supposed to be just a place for praying and fasting. It was also supposed to be a place of socialization. There's a community garden. Brothers and sisters can come and take part in it. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Apologies, Sheikh. While the raffle's being prepared, just a quick announcements that I missed earlier today. Just put it right there. There is a community-wide Salawat challenge that is being hosted by the City for Knowledge Islamic Academy. The goal is to, inshallah, reach 1 million salawats as a campaign for the month of Rabiul Awal. This is a chance to strengthen our love for Allah's beloved and earn great rewards. So far, we have reached 301,000 pledges, mostly from our sisters. We need our brothers to step up and contribute. The intention, of course, is to... The intention, of course, is to gift. Intention, of course, is this is as a gift to the Holy Prophet to, inshallah, hasten the reappearance of our Imam, relief for Palestinians, forgiveness of sins, and Isa al-Sawab for all of our marhumin. As we all know what the easiest salawat is, the goal, inshallah, is to reach 1 million. There was a link sent out earlier today, and once again, inshallah, will be sent out tomorrow. Please register and pledge your salawats on that link.
Thank you. So, the raffle, I think it's okra. Yes, okra that was grown. Now, did I ever think we'd be giving out okra after years of studying in Hausa? No, I didn't think this day would come. All right, let's see our lucky winner. Inshallah. But you guys understand the main point is the community garden, right? It's not the okra. It's inshallah for you guys to connect on the community garden and inshallah. Inshallah. All right, we just choose one. Just one. All right, inshallah, it's a brother. There's a brother Asad Jas, is that correct? Asad Jasani. Yes, is he here? Oh, the number is 204-841. 204-841. But there's no Asad. Is Asad here? Oh, he was here. Okay, so we'll hold on to it and give it to him, or I don't think it counts. Okay, yeah, we're gonna do a second one, yes. Where? When did Asad lose all of his hair? Asad lost all of his hair. All right, next one. All right, this one doesn't have a name. 204-909. 204-909. Anybody? Oh, mashallah. Come, Maryam. Ajo. Come. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Come. Loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Wa ala Muhammad. Ajil farajahum. Here you go. Loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Wa ala Muhammad. Thank you. Inshallah, we'll end with ziyarah, inshallah. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين. السلام على 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.